Hi, this is Charlie giving you Monday's market commentary. Before we go into that, I just thought I'd give you some observations from the World Money Show that Kim and I were at on Friday and Saturday. And interesting, met a lot of interesting people there. Good to do that one for a change. We haven't been there for a few years. And firstly, yeah, just interesting talking to obviously a lot of the delegates there. Such a wide variety of individual that you see at these shows. And interestingly, met one or two people who were not being successful. It was really interesting with two individuals actually that I spoke to. One individual who was basically at the moment, and he admitted it, but he was an out and out gambler, and he did admit that he was. And I said, look, if you don't stop what you're doing, it won't work for you. It was basically he'd been down about 10,000. And he'd worked his account all the way back, so he was down 10,000 on his account, and he'd worked his account all the way back to only being 500 down, £500 down, and then only then in the space of like a day or something to then take it back up to 10,000 again or whatever it was. But what I had to try and say to him was, yes, although he said, I did so well getting from 10,000 down to 500. I said, no, I'm sorry, but you didn't. I said, all that happened was you carried on trading in that style that you're trading in, and it disguised the fact that ultimately the style that you were trying to trade in wasn't going to work for you long term, and it was only a matter of time before this happened again. And it's often a trick that the markets can play on you, in that you think that I'm having a really good run, and actually, in actual fact, that you're not actually having a good run. Yes, you're making money, but then ultimately what's going to happen is your next losing period is then going to come up against you. So that was an interesting one. So I had a good chat with him and said, look, that's not going to work that way. You're going to need to change the way you're trading. And that's the only way that you're going to turn that around. And then another guy, and don't get me wrong, I spoke to people who are doing well as well, obviously, but I'm always going to pick on the guys, the stories of traders who are not doing well, because that other people can always learn from that. And then we had another chap who had learned a huge amount, put himself on loads of courses and things like that, and got a lot of material and learned a lot, and put a huge amount of work in. So he'd put a lot of hours into his trading. And what he couldn't understand is that the result. Now, bear in mind, he'd only been doing this not very long at all. I don't even think since the beginning of the year. So I think it was like April or something like that. He said, but the thing is, he said he's been very successful in his career and he wants to do this full time. And he said, but I'm putting all these hours in, and I've learned all this material from. It was another company that's trained him. And they've done. They teach you loads of stuff. It costs a lot of money to do these courses with this other company. And they give you software and all sorts of bits and pieces, but he's losing money, and so what his frustration is that the amount of work that he's put in, it's not yielding a result which is relative to the work that he's putting in. And I said, well, unfortunately in the markets they don't work that way. Just because you've put in a lot of work doesn't mean to say that your result will reflect the work you've put in. Ultimately it does, because like I was trying to say to him, is that you just haven't got any experience yet. Yes, you've learned techniques and things like that, but you haven't got the experience to know what's going wrong. So I had quite a long, maybe an hour's chat with him, trying to give him some pointers on things he should look at within his trading. And so that was really interesting as well, because from a psychological perspective, we go out and we work and we have our careers and everything else, and we're generally in a working environment. The more hours you put in, the maybe the greater the reward that you get out of it, whether it be through promotion or through higher income or whatever it might be. But with trading, it doesn't work that way. You could have one trade in a day, and that could make you a lot more than someone else who's just taken 10 trades, for example. We all know that. And but it's experience, and he was lacking experience. So basically, I was saying to him, I said, you're asking too much of yourself too soon in, and his demands, because he wants to be a full-time trader, he's demanding too much too soon. And so I thought that was interesting as well, but gave me a lot of pointers there. So overall, an interesting show. You still get your charlatans there, unfortunately, as well. That's the one thing I don't enjoy. Kim and I don't enjoy when you see other companies there and you can see it a mile off, and they're promising, oh, we've got this course for £2,997, and we're going to give it to you for free or whatever it is. And you can see that these people have probably never traded a day in their life, and they've probably been on a few courses in the past themselves, and thought they'd just start teaching courses and make a load of money from doing that. It's painful to see these charlatans when you go to these shows. But don't get me wrong, there's plenty of genuine people there as well. But the unfortunate thing is that to the average delegate, they don't always spot those. I mean, obviously there's delegates that do, but there's plenty of delegates who don't, and so there's plenty of delegates who buy into the nonsense that's taught. There's one American guy I was being told who's doing courses for 40,000. I don't know if it's pounds or dollars, but for 40,000, and he wasn't there at this particular event, but apparently he's never traded before, and just a load of nonsense he's been peddling. So you do get that sort of stuff there, but that's why I did the live trading. It could have been Kim or myself. We decided it'd be me this time, and do the live trading because we put our neck on the line, as you guys know, and say, right, okay, well, rather than doing a fancy presentation with a nice slideshow showing people or what did happen in the past when they're seeing a chart, then we actually say, no, I just sat down and said, I'm not doing a presentation, I'm sitting here to trade, and just had that very short window. It was 45 minutes in total to trade, and then got a trade within that 45-minute window. I'd rather do that and show people, okay, this is who we are and this is what we do, rather than and say, okay, so you can watch us trading, good or bad. Obviously, it worked out good, but it could have been we had a nice trade out of it. But the main thing is that people are seeing me applying a trading plan, and I talked through my trading plan before I'd even taken the trade, so they knew what I was going to be doing, and that's the real thing, rather than talking nonsense about secrets and things like that. Anyway, we're 7 minutes in. Right, let's quickly go. Let's press number 3. Okay, right. So the pound. Okay, so they rolled over on Friday, and so fair enough. All these markets have rolled over a little bit. I suspect there's more downside. We sort of hinted on Friday's market commentary. Same with the euro. Hinted that the euro may in fact be wanting to roll over, and again that has as well. And so I suspect, like I said, I think on Fridays we've got obviously we're coming down towards the lower end of this range, or we're at the lower end of this range. So it's going to be interesting to see if that's going to break. I suspect that ultimately it is going to break, and so I'll be looking for a bit more downside. So where do we come to from there? Well, when you come to the weekly charts, we've got this zone here as a nice retest zone. It was a zone over here that if I put a line on, actually, then if I can find a line, appropriate line. Okay, I'll have to be. I wanted to have a horizontal line. There it is. So there we go. So all through that area, that zone, we made a low there, and obviously we tested that before rolling over, and I suspect that as we've broken through it, maybe that's where we want to come down to before there's any sort of significant bounce or whatever. So there is some potential downside there before any potential bounce. Of course, we still are hugging this 50-week moving average. I'm well aware of that, and but price needs to break out of this zone, which I talked about a few weeks ago. It needed to get that close above 31.40, I think it was. We haven't obviously done that, and so until the market does that, then we just play the markets as they roll. And at the moment, I suspect we're now getting a little bit more of a heads up as to what's going on, and overall we may see a bit more downside. And I think that's going to be the same with the S&P as well. I think there's going to be a little bit more downside there too, and so yeah, I think as if we get a bit more downside, then it's going to be pick up the volatility a little bit more, which is quite nice. Not really too much more to say. Overall, the trend's up. Know that, so not really too much to say about that. The overall trend's up, but let's see if we're going to get a little bit of a correction here. And but overall, the markets are obviously in a bull market until proven otherwise. But for now, looking like a little bit more weakness. I shall leave it at that. Have a great couple of days. Kim will be back on Wednesday.